Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. Without further ado, I've been spending some time really thinking about how I want to take the podcast. At the time I'm recording this, we're at like episode 270, so I'm approaching 300 episodes. Been doing this for quite a while, and I want to be a lot more intentional with the conversations that I have and how I'm having them and what the conversations are about. And the show is called Walk to Wealth, but I haven't done the best job of talking about wealth, or at least focusing on wealth. Talk about the journeys that people have gone through to get to where they're at. And so I really want to make an intentional pivot. So this is my first interview post this like little epiphany I had over the past weekend. And it's currently a Tuesday that I'm recording. So literally I kind of had this epiphany a couple of days ago. And so we'll see how it goes. We're in for a great conversation. The guy I have on today, I met a few years back at a conference here in Stamford. And from there, we kind of connected, and seeing him this year again, it kind of came top of mind. I was like, you know what, let me bring this guy on. So Russell, for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure, the opportunity to get to hear you speak, to get to know you, man, tell us your quick little elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh man, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you for having me on your show and being the first guest
Yeah.
on Walk to Wealth, man. This is exciting.
Yeah.
I'm super pumped about it. Russ Rogers, living in California, live on the coast in Santa Cruz. I am a beach guy, really. I'm a beach guy. I have a landscaping company, but I also write books, author, speaker, motivator, encouraging people to basically get outside and move.
Yeah.
Get away from, devices, unplug, disconnect, whatever you want to call it. And let's get outside and move our bodies, refreshing our minds, move our spirits, and put ourselves in a great, better position, both physically as well as mentally.
Amazing, man. I didn't know that about you. I knew that you were a speaker, motivator, and stuff like that, but I didn't know you had a landscaping company. My dad's a landscaper
Yes.
as well. He's been in that
Oh,
industry for God knows how long, for a while, but he's had his own practice for the last 5-ish or so years. That's kind of how me and my
okay.
dad kind of got cool again because we weren't the best growing up. But he started around my time where I graduated high school. It's kind of around the time when he was starting his business on his own, and at that point in time, I'm a little older now. I could understand things, and he needed some help with his business. So, and then I got into entrepreneurship, and then we started, get a lot closer. But yeah, he has his own landscaping business. It's just been
That's so
raining
cool.
like a ton here in CT. So it's been hard for him to kind of catch up on work just because the weather hasn't been cooperating at all. Right now it's raining, and then this weekend it's supposed to rain for like another 3 or 4 days, and it's not like rainy days.
Jeez.
It's like rainy spurts where there'll be like 3-4
Yeah.
days back to back where it's just pouring rain. And so but yeah, so I
What
didn't know
happened to
that about
summer
you.
sunshine, man?
I know I'm trying to enjoy the summer, but it's hard. Every other day it's friggin' thunderstorm out or something. Like today, I was outside
Yes.
legit from the door to the car. By the time I got to the car, it felt like I just got in a water balloon fight. And so it's like there's literally nothing I could do at that point. But yeah, so to kind of get into this podcast again, I'm switching up the kind of the style of how I do these interviews. And so the first question I normally used to
Awesome.
ask is take us back in the time machine. But I'm gonna move that to question
Yeah.
number 2. The first question I'm really curious is I know wealth is a very subjective thing, and so moving forward, that's what I kind of want to get to the bottom to get a bunch of people's perspective on the word wealth, what it means to them, how did they come to that definition. So again, this is the first interview kind of going at doing it like this. So my first question to you is, how would you define wealth? No right answers, no wrong answers. Just what is your personal own definition of wealth that you're striving towards?
Yeah. I think most people, when they think of wealth, obviously think of money, right?
Hmm.
Wealth is money, which it is. Wealth is also success, which it is. However, over the years, especially, writing books and speaking and connecting with other people, networking, I have found that really that success is really about friendships. It's really about relationships. It's really about connecting with other people.
Hmm.
Because if you don't have people in your life, you're going to live a very lonely version of yourself, a sedentary lifestyle. And that is not wealth. That's not health.
Hmm.
It's just it's a lifestyle that we need to refrain from. We need to get away from, and we need to move towards friendships, relationships, and connectivity and community.
Yeah, no, great. So it sounds from like what you're telling me is that your definition of wealth is kind of centered around the quality of people around you. If I get that right, that's like a big proponent of how you define wealth.
Yeah, quantity and quality,
Yeah,
getting deep because the thing about relationships, you're not going to get deep with
a
everybody,
hundred
right?
percent.
You have different levels of relationships. But wealth is connectivity and it's about community, and everything that I do and everything I talk about is really about defining what wellness is.
Yeah.
And wellness, is wealth, and community is wealth, because I think when we surround ourselves with good people, which is what my college coach preached, the five most important words in life is surround yourself with good people. When you do that, you have wealth.
Okay, so all right, I'm curious now. Like, take us back in a time machine. What was
Okay.
life like, kind of growing up? The kind of how did we get to this definition? Take us back to as early as you can remember or feel comfortable sharing. Like, what was life like growing up? Did you have a big family? Were you in a big neighborhood town? Did you grow up kind of like where did this kind of come from?
Yeah, so I lived in a rural area.
Okay.
My parents built a house about 3.5 miles outside of town.
Mm-hmm.
That town has, gradually over the years consumed the neighborhoods around. So my parents still have, my dad has passed on, but my mom and dad, when they built a house for me and for my siblings and for our family back when I was 1 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we got, 56 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we lived in the cornfields. We lived with nature. We lived with animals. So that was really my upbringing. But we were heavily involved in church.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our community. Our community was family, and our community was church.
Yeah.
And so through that was a lot of relationships that were established at an early age. In fact, one of the kids that I met when I was 3 years old came and visited my mom and I and my son. We were in Modesto last week. 54-year-old relationship. And he stopped by. He lives part-time in the Northwest, part-time in Mexico. But, when you think about life and you think about quality, you think about those healthy relationships that you have, that of kids and family. And of course, we meet friends along the way, people that come into our lives, people that, drop off. But, it goes back to those times that I spent growing up with my family. We've got a big family. I think there's about 55 of us in all. I think, my mom's got
Damn.
grandchildren. She's got great grandchildren. So
Yeah.
when we get together, it's community, right? And it's a healthy family. That's the beauty of it. My parents built a healthy family. So growing up, a lot of sports, a lot of activities, a lot of, being outside, a lot of playing. My parents had to tell us to come inside. And sometimes at 1 in the morning on the weekend.
Yeah.
So we were outside playing in hoop. We would be in the pool. My parents didn't care.
Yeah.
We were outside having fun. It was good, clean fun. And now when you look at society, it's all about telling kids you got to get outside.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a total 180 of my life and kids' lives today.
No, 100%. I'm glad that you kind of mentioned like having a healthy family, that your parents built that intentionally. It's so dope because I know for my family personally, like we used to have the biggest get-togethers. It felt like, especially when I was younger, it felt like
Hmm.
everybody, would be there and at these like family functions for the Fourth of July and all that stuff. I grew up in a Dominican family. I'm Dominican Guatemalan. And so
Okay.
my Dominican side, they know how to party, right? It's ingrained in the blood. They know how to party. But as I got older, I started to realize like everyone would get together. As soon as everyone started to separate and go apart, that's when everyone started to talk about each other. And as I got older, it's like, I kind of started to distance myself more and more away to more and more further away, until the point like where I don't think I ever show my face at any family functions anymore. But I know for when I start my family in the future, I want to, similar to what your parents did, build a happy, healthy family so that,
Absolutely.
we can have those get-togethers. Like, community is such an important aspect, and like you mentioned, especially on this entrepreneurial journey, like it gets really lonely. So it's dope to hear that your family had that. And I feel like I grew up at a time where like I got to enjoy the best of both worlds. Like I was outside playing manhunt, playing tag, playing whatever, you know, but
Yeah.
I also still had, a little bit of technology, so I can come home, play my GameCube on a day where it's like too cold or the weather was too bad. They kind of had like the best of both
Yeah.
worlds of being outside, but also being on the game and enjoying the technology before it took over. Like I see my little sister, and she's not even 2 yet, but like she watches as soon as Coco Melon comes on. She is glued to that screen. Like it is nuts. Like you cannot get her attention for
Yeah.
anything. But yeah. So, but again, I'm starting to like the family, right, that I choose to call my family is slowly but surely
Yeah,
starting to grow, and it's really dope having a good community around yourself. So so that was a big part of
absolutely,
your
man.
life. You're just playing with your family, being a part of the church, and that community aspect. Fast forward us a little bit, like when did you
Okay.
start, consciously thinking about like your future? I know for me it was around like junior, senior year of high school, or around junior, late sophomore into junior years when I started thinking about, you know, I wasn't clear at all, but that's when the thoughts for me started to figure out like I wanted a little bit more in life than just the traditional track of working until you die and, hopefully having enough saved up. So like for you, like where did your journey start to go as you started getting older into your young adulthood?
Yeah, I would say it was my junior year, because it was at that time that I started thinking about what I wanted to do in college,
Yeah.
where I wanted to attend college. I was, because I was sports related. I played baseball and basketball and football throughout high school, and so it was really between football and baseball, kind of where I wanted to go.
Hmm.
So I looked into Fresno State.
Okay.
I got accepted, got everything, ready to go, and so that was my junior year preparing for that, and I had to take a special class at the junior college during my high school senior year. So I would start my day around 7:30, taking a class there, so that I could fill out and get everything completed for acceptance. So I finally got that all done. I was all set to go, and it was the summer going into my freshman year in college that summer I was approached by another local college coach. He was college, high school. He did a bunch of stuff, but he said, "Hey, what have you ever heard about Cal Poly?" And I was like, "No, I've heard of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo." And he goes, "Well, this is Cal Poly Pomona." And I said, "No, I don't know anything about it." And he goes, "I would really like to encourage you to take a look in this college." And I said, "Well, I'm already headed to Fresno State. I'm going to go play baseball there." And basically the bottom line was is I ended up taking this trip, went down with my dad. We visited visited the campus, met the coach. You would appreciate this. I got picked up at the airport from the coach. He was about 67 at the time. This old Italian coach, John Scalinas, picked up in this old blue beat up station wagon. And I was like, what in the world is happening here? You know what I mean? And so I was just like, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And the stack by my feet was a stack of newspapers that he just had in the car.
Yeah.
So my feet are on top of the newspapers. My knees are up into my chin. And I'm like, what? And what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. We toured the campus. He was the most amazing coach. So at that time, when I was 17 years of age, I had to make the first major decision in my life. And that was whether I was going to attend Cal Poly and pull away from Fresno State or just continue down that path. Ultimately, I felt within about a week that I needed to attend Cal Poly Pomona, which I did, and I ended up playing baseball there for 4 years at Cal Poly, and it was a game changer. And I knew that at that point in time, that decision, my first major decision in life, took me on a path that I had no idea where it was going to lead.
Yeah.
And it was exciting times.
No, 100%. I can resonate with that a ton because it's like taking that step into the unknown. Oftentimes, like leads to really good outcomes in the long term, and so like sometimes you just gotta like sit quiet and listen and see where you're being pulled towards, and kind of just
Yes.
run with it. No, 100%. And that's dope. I didn't know you played football and baseball too. Sheesh, that's dope. I played football.
Yeah.
That was my main position. I hated baseball. Something about like standing still and just watching a 90-mile-per-hour missile just get launched at you just doesn't really sit all that well with me. So after middle school, I kind of dropped that and went all
That's
into
funny.
like football and basketball. What position did you play for football? Just
You,
curious.
I played quarterback.
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 Wow, there
Yeah.
we
You
go.
look like a wide receiver. You look like a wide receiver.
I played my main position. Position I was better at was safety. I played safety my
Okay.
senior year. We had my junior year was probably the most fun in terms of like the position I played. I like playing safety too, but
Yeah.
we
You
had
like
like
hitting
this.
people.
We had like an outside linebacker, free safety hybrid, and I used to just float around my junior
Okay.
year. So like I'll be in the box sometimes, but sometimes I'll drop back and into deep coverage, and so that position was the absolute most fun position I ever played. But senior year they moved me over to strong safety. So always a deep back. I did pretty. I had some pretty solid numbers. Nothing like crazy, crazy, but I think I ended up like with 50 tackles or something like that. 2 picks my senior year,
That's
and a
awesome.
forced fumble. Um, I had some pretty decent stats. I could have went D2, D3. I ended up not being able to just because of financial aid. But
Yeah.
yeah. But then I ended up going to college, and that was my first big decision. Was like, you know, similar to you. It's like, hey, do I try to figure this out and run with sports and see where that takes me? Because I love the game, you know. Or do I make the financially responsible decision and not, get myself into crazy, crazy debt? Turns out, no matter what
Right.
decision I ended up making, the pandemic was going to happen. Little did I know. So either way, I would have, my college experience would have gotten screwed, But yeah, so that's dope. So
Yeah.
you played baseball all 4 years, at Pomona, and then from there, um, I'm sure you probably learned a lot about discipline and time management and stuff like that. And so, like, as you kind of got into the real world,
Absolutely.
where were you kind of feeling pulled towards? 'Cause I know that it's always tough, especially when you love the game and you're good at the game. Like, we all come to that decision. Most of us know we're not making it to the professional leagues, where we have to like kind of just say, all right,
Right.
I have to kind of put the pin in it now and figure out what I actually want to do for my
Got to
life,
move on.
and move on. And it's probably the most, I wouldn't even call it bittersweet because there's not much sweet about it. But like, I mean, I coming to terms with the fact that you may not ever play a sport that you love again was never an easy decision at all. I still remember my last football game. I teared up,
100%.
and it wasn't like sobbing, but just like kind of acceptance tears, but like sad. And I just remember I remember
Yes.
hugging my coach and just a tear dropping down my face, and it was like, yeah, this is really like, this is it, this is it for me here.
This is it,
And so
man.
like, so what
Yeah.
was that like for you? Coming out of playing those 4 years, having a blast, where now you have to enter into the real world. What was that kind of transition like?
It was a transition of unknown,
Mm,
right? Even though I studied hotel business management
yeah.
and I did that for a period of time, but I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel like this is really where I wanted to go, even though I really enjoyed it.
Mm,
It wasn't really where I wanted to go. So after my 4 years at Cal Poly, I stayed in the LA area,
mm,
and I actually worked as a junior high pastor and a PE teacher, kind of a mismatch, hodgepodge kind of a job, and just really trying to find what it was I wanted to do. And it was during that time that I knew that I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to be active, whether it was in church ministry or any type of something along the line with kids, giving to kids, right, and developing kids. And that was the beginning of a long ride that is continuing today, because then I moved up north, moved to where I am now, Santa Cruz. Ended up going to a university, private university, Bethany University. Ended up going there. And then while I was there, I got a job as a youth pastor for 6 years. Ended up moving after that to Mexico, serving at an orphanage for 2 years, working with kids who were brought in from infants all the way up until 18
mm,
that came into the orphanage. We had about 60 orphans that lived there, working with kids again. Then I went back to Bethany University where I went to school after Cal Poly, ended up working there, coaching kids, coaching the collegiate softball team for 7 years, and then starting a training business for 20 years, working with kids. So you see how it just launched,
yeah.
and it just year after year after year in different varieties of things. I started working with kids, and it was absolutely amazing. So, just giving, pouring out into people's lives, pouring out in these kids' lives, from anywhere from a 30-minute training session to years and years of training. I had some kids that came to me for, 8, 9 years.
Mm.
They would come to me even during college when they had, winter breaks or summer breaks, and we would work out. And so working with kids for 20 years, it was just a time of connection. And we go back to wealth. We talk about that. We talk about community, and it was all about community all during those times.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been a through line. I mean, I was about to mention it, but you already mentioned it. But yeah, it's very clear as to like why connection and relationships is such a big part of your definition of wealth. Because like, I mean, you growing up in a big family, growing up in a church, and growing up playing sports. What you said, football, baseball. What was the other sport you mentioned?
Basketball.
Basketball. Yeah,
Played
all
basketball.
team sports. all team sports. Then you go to
Yes.
college for a team sport, right? And then you go and get, start in a school for kids. And so it's like you're always been around just people all the time, all the time, all the time. So
Yes.
I'm curious, being around so many people, right? You're bound to meet people that you don't really connect all that well with, right? Some people, you'll
Yeah,
bump into,
that's
and it's
right.
like water and oil, and you never really know, people's intentions. And so part of, you mentioned about the quality of people. You mentioned this earlier about, you can only have but so many deep connections, right? And so I'm curious, like, what were some of the things that you kind of like listened for or looked for when connecting with people, so that you can find yourself connecting with the right people? Because a lot of times, especially in entrepreneurship, especially when you're newer to entrepreneurship, you kind of see like the money and being your own boss and like the flashy stuff like that. It can be very easy to see someone who has the quote unquote level of success that you want, or may say that you want, but not really realize that you actually want it because you don't know what it takes to get there. But the level of success that
Yeah.
you claim to want, and then get guided in the wrong direction. There's a lot of people too that go to events and just
Yeah.
pass out business cards and shake hands and never actually meaningfully collect. So like, how have you been able to, make meaningful connections? But not only that, but like you mentioned that, that friend of 54 years that you saw, when you visited back. Like, how do you make meaningful connections that last? And what have you learned
Yeah.
being surrounded by so many people for so long, and being, in sports, being in schools, being, having a business? Like, you're always around people. So like, how have you been able to make meaningful connections that last?
Yeah, great questions, man. I think that, we find in our lives, people are going to come and go,
Hmm.
right? And I think that as we get on this trajectory to where we want to go, and most recently in my mission and what I'm trying to accomplish through, writing books, speaking, and motivating people, is that you'll find that people will come and go. And Will, a guy that I sat next to at the A to B conference that you and I were at just a couple of months ago,
Hmm.
after I got up and spoke on stage, I sat down, and a few minutes later, he was hyping me up and everything. It made me feel great. And he said, Russ, you're on a rocket ship and you're going up. And he said, on this rocket ship, you've had people that are on this rocket ship that have been on there for years. But there's not much time devoted. There's not much time invested any longer, and they're going to fall off of that rocket ship because of your trajectory.
Hmm.
It's not in a bad way. It's just that they're not going where you're going, right? And so, but new people are going to come onto this rocket ship, and they're going to latch on because they get where you're going. And so those new relationships, those new friendships that are building, that are bonding in this time, that is a beautiful thing. But there's friendships that I have had for years that I don't spend a lot of time cultivating. I don't spend a lot of time investing in, though. It's kind of one of those friendships that, like, you pick up years later and it's like you've been talking this entire time.
Yeah.
I just went to my 40-year high school reunion, and
Sheesh.
the table that I was at, right? The table that I was at, had football players and wives and different athletes and stuff. And so we were sitting there and we were just laughing it up, going back to memory lane. And it was like we hadn't seen each other in 10 years. And it was like we had just hung out last week. And so there's that beautiful, deep connection that you spent time with 4 years in high school. And now you're coming back, every 10 years and reconnecting with these people. It's meaningful relationships. But like my buddy of 54 years, he and I talk on a regular basis, including his brother, who's just about a year and a half older than I. And so we talk, we cultivate, we invest in time with each other, with our families, with our kids. We're always staying in contact. So there's those types of deep, meaningful relationships. And then,
Hmm.
of course, there's the new ones that are coming on. So, it's all about what you want to invest in other people and what other people want to invest in you. And just like you said with the business card, not everybody, even though people are doling out business cards, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a deep connection with them, whether it's relationship, friendship, business relationship, whatever. It may be just very, very surface. You're going to know the ones that you really want to latch onto because the time that you're giving, guess what? They're investing that same amount of time in you. And that's the ones that you want to latch on. If you're just constantly giving and not getting anything back, you're just like, what is the purpose? What is the meaning? And it's not about receiving, but we got to receive as well. And so I just look at those relationships that, and I've just in the last year since A to B from a year ago, just some of those relationships, like my podcast partner, Dan Skoka. We met right prior, 2 months prior to A to B. We go to A to B. We go to another conference in New York. We go to another conference. Now we're basically soulmates through our podcast. We're
Yeah.
doing, we've got this partnership, and we're talking, we're texting, and it's a beautiful thing. He was at my event just a couple weeks ago. So it's that time that you're investing that is a beautiful thing. When you're investing, they're investing, and it brings a lot deeper meaning to friendship and or relationship.
No, I agree with you 100%. I want to second that too. I think there's a saying like there's a givers in the world and there's takers, right? And the takers usually
Yes.
go further faster in the short term because they're just trying to take from as many people. They're very transactional, and in the short term, they take off, right? Because they're
Yep.
just
Yep.
getting from everybody. But in the long term, when a giver also finds a giver, it usually leads to super meaningful connection because you guys are both coming from places of like, hey, I just want to help the other person, and I don't really care to
Yeah.
get anything in return. And those like those selfless connections kind of lead to like the best connection, as you mentioned. Like one example similar to me, like is my buddy Rob, right? Rob, I met him at one of
Yep.
Brandon's speaker schools, and then I think me and Rob have roomed together at like two or three different conferences. And we roomed together in New Orleans. We went to a conference called FinCon. We went to Miami a couple times together for one of the speaker schools out there. And so like, but again, to your point is you bump into people and it's like along the way, some people, I mean, I'd never seen that guy ever in my life until like one day I decided to show up to a speaker school, and next you know, we're just pouring into each other. I got a photo here on my birthday with me, him, and one of my other like childhood friends. But like to your point, is like once you bump into those people, like those connections, they just you just kind of get a feeling, and you just
Yeah.
you just gotta keep investing in them. And so I love that you mentioned that. One of my favorite quotes is like, I wish you would learn to love people and use things, and not the other way around. And I think a lot of people love what they can get from people, and not actually love on the people themselves and stuff like that. So I love that you have a great mindset around like connection and stuff like that. So fast forward a little bit, right? So you got into training kids and various different channels or whatever, and eventually you stumbled into a landscaping business. So I'm curious because I mentioned before we kind of press record. My dad also has a landscaping business, so I didn't know that about you. So kind of how, what stage in your life, what point did you kind of get into this whole landscaping thing between going to the orphanage and working at schools and coaching kids? Like at what point in time did you find the time to start your landscaping business? How did that even come about?
Yeah, yeah. The interesting thing is that my dad was a contractor,
Yeah.
and my mom worked for my dad, kept the books, but we had 3.5 acres, and my dad developed those 3.5 acres. So on weekends, particularly Saturday, we would my family would spend time out in the yard working, cultivating, and just growing and planting trees and making it beautiful. Now here we are, 56 years later, yeah, working it, but it's gorgeous. It's like a park setting. And so that was probably initiated me way back when I was a kid. But when I went to Bethany University to work when I was a collegiate coach, my initial responsibility when I came on there was to develop the campus. So, because of my construction background, I had applied for this job as a development officer. So,
Mm.
what I was responsible for doing was bringing teams in of workers who would help, improve the campus. So that was ultimately my job. But I spent a lot of time outside. So we were, tearing apart buildings and remodeling them, but we were also, putting in time and making the landscape beautiful. And it was right there that I really got a passion for working outdoors, for really being outside, for really making dirt look beautiful, right? And seeing what goes with what, and just letting your imagination really kind of cultivate something beautiful in front of a building. And so that's really where I got my inspiration for wanting to do landscaping. So I had this, kind of an 8-year contract kind of thing. And so when I was done with the 8 years, I was like, all right, now what I'm going to do? Well, my passion is landscaping. So I was like, I'm going to start a landscaping business, right? I'm just going to
Mm,
be me. And so I just started, just like you did, right? With what you're doing, it was just me, and I'm doing it. And then I had the personal training business. So I used both of those as leverage to make a living for my family.
mm,
And so built those up over, 20 plus years. During COVID, that's when the training stopped, the schools closed, the parks closed. I couldn't do that. So I just focused just on landscaping and still doing it today. And I absolutely love it. I spend a lot less time in the field working with the guys. My guys do most of the work. But I'm the relationship guy. I'm the guy that's building relationships and getting jobs and putting out the estimates and all that kind of stuff. And I just love it because it's all about building relationships with people,
yeah.
right? And these homeowners and having, I mean, years later, I did a house 10 years ago, and somebody just contacted me and say, hey, can you come and do this thing? And so it's just, it's a beautiful thing because it goes back to connection and connectivity. It's like those deep friendships, relationships, working relationships, they bring value. So that's kind of how that all came about.
Yeah, that's dope. And so now you have the landscaping thing. You're still public speaking. You have the books that are coming out. So like to kind of pivot towards like, a lot of your definition of wealth was around the community and stuff like that. So I'm curious now. At your age of, you said 56, correct? So
Yep.
56 moving forward, how are you going to continually and actively pursue that definition of wealth that we started off this podcast with? Like, what are you currently doing to strive towards that every day? What's working for you? What's not? And just kind of just take us all in.
Yeah. So, last year I spent a lot of time going to events, VIP
Mm,
dinners, A to B conference. David Meltzer, I went to several of his. Craig Siegel went to some of his. So last year was just pouring in to me,
mm,
feeding myself and ready for growth, right? Because in December of 23, I was asked this question by Craig Siegel, said, what is your word for 2024? And in that moment, when he quickly asked that question, I didn't have an answer, but in a split second, the word intentional came into my head.
mm,
And so I talked about intention all of 2024 and now into 25, because being intentional is a game changer. If you think about that word and you think about your life, it changed the whole dynamic, the whole progress. It just brought a whole new meaning to what I needed to do. So last year I spent a lot of time investing in me, the entire year, really. And then, cultivating new friendships and relationships, people like yourself, meeting people along the way. And so through that, I knew at that point in time, as I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is beautiful for me to attend, but I need to be doing this. I need to be the one that is pouring into other people. I need to be the one that's speaking. And so I had already written books, and just several weeks ago, I launched book 12 and book
wow.
13, which
Wow.
is an amazing ride. And so it's all now is I need to continually invest in myself. I need to keep pouring into me, whether I'm listening to podcasts, I'm reading books, I'm going away and having a day of just thinking and writing, journaling, praying, whatever it may be. I need to do those things so I can have my mind being creative for what is to come, right? And planning and those things. And so all of that is basically laid the foundation for now, where I launched two more books. I did an event called Impact Santa Cruz today just several weeks ago, and right here in my community, which was all about health and wellness. I started Community Strides, which is a one time a month walk that we do on the second Saturday of every month, and it's just a 2 mile walk. So I'm just encouraging people in their community on the second Saturday to go out, get people together, community, and building new friendships, new relationships, walking together, developing health, developing wellness, developing community. So now it's like I continually pour into myself, but now it's like I need to just give and pour into other people and motivate people, inspire people, get people moving, get people connecting. So that is all about what my goal and my aspirations are from this time forward.
Yeah, that's dope. So if I'm hearing you correctly, so it's been like almost a year and a half ride that you kind of been on since you decided to be more intentional.
Yes.
But a year and a half ride.
Yes.
Um, and then one of the questions I had in 2023 is like, who do you want to do life with, right? and like I got a lot more
Yeah.
intentional around the people I have around me, the people I talk to, the people I let on the show, the people like for me, like the only prereq to really hop on the podcast is, are we friends? If yes, let's talk. If no, let's not talk, and that's okay, right? Because I just want to be intentional
It
with,
is okay.
with who I'm speaking to and who I'm spending my time with, and so it's dope that around that time period you also had a similar like epiphany of like just becoming a lot more intentional. So it sounds like 2024, you pretty much poured as much as you possibly could, time, energy, effort, money, into getting in the right rooms to help you get to
Yes.
that next stage, whether it was a conference or whether it was a dinner, as you mentioned. So now, as we're entering the back half of 2025, like, I'm curious, what didn't work along the way? Because I know for me personally, I even have an episode that I dropped on this podcast a couple of months back about how I wasted like almost $20,000 on personal development stuff that I honestly had no need for. Not that they weren't good stuff, but great solution, wrong timing is still just as bad as
Yes.
bad solution, great timing. And so
Yeah.
I purchased way too many things, got ahead of myself, and so what mistakes have you made over the past year and a half that have kind of like hindered your growth or stunted your growth a little bit that you had to kind of overcome as you were becoming a lot more intentional? Because I'm sure there was some trial and error in there.
Absolutely. To me, it's saying the word no.
Mm.
And Craig had told me, he said, listen, he goes, you can't say yes to everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And along the way, I've started finding myself saying yes to a lot of things. And they all sounded good. They all sounded appealing. And were they worth it? Probably. They were probably worth it. Were they worth the money? Questionable,
Yeah.
right? But now, as I'm thinking about that statement, he said, and not saying yes to everything, is being intentional in my decision making, because some of those things, as cool as they were, right, really didn't materialize into anything, right? And so you're falling. I won't call it a trap, because it's not a trap, because it's their business. And that's what they're doing, and they're trying to promote you or get you to think differently or whatever it is. We've got to be smart in our decision making. Like you said, throwing $20,000 to something. We've got to be smart in our decision making. Is this defining who I am? Is this where I'm going? Is this going to help me in my goals and where I want to be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now? And so I think, for me, it was learning to say the word no. This is not fit in my plan. This doesn't fit in my budget. This doesn't feel in where I want to go. So, yes, I made mistakes along the way that said, I probably should not have spent money in that particular area, been smarter with it, learned to say no, and improving in that area now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 1,000%. Just one of the things I've heard is not now. Instead of saying no, say not now.
Mhm.
Because like you mentioned, like
Yeah.
some things are they worth it? Yeah, maybe not now. Not now though. Or for the right person at the right time, yeah, that program probably is worth it for even right now. And that also takes a lot of awareness to know where you currently are, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
know where you want to go, and just like having that as be your compass is like, all right, is this going to help me get to where I want to get to? If yes, the next question is like, all right, is this going to help me get to where I want to get to at the level that I'm currently at? For example, like I am
Right.
eventually going to have to hire help, right? At my
Yeah.
current stage, I don't need to hire help. So if I go take a course on scaling or leverage or whatever and stuff like that, yes, that is a helpful course, but like I'm not there yet. And so it would be a
Yeah.
waste of my time and whoever's teaching that program's time, because I'm not even ready for that stage and I can't get ahead of myself. So man, Russ, it's been dope talking to you so far. I'm glad we were able to
That's fine.
connect, man. Where could we catch up with you? Where can
Likewise.
we find you at? I know you have a ton of books, so where can we kind of, if you could send us, where can we find all the books and who are they? Who are they for?
Yeah, so the books are mainly for kids and families.
Mm,
Although I just recently, the last two books that I wrote called Unplugged and Imagine If. These are adult reads. Unplugged is really taking on the perspective of my Today books, which were getting kids and families outside, doing fun activities together. And
mm,
this being summer, what a great time to do that. So Unplugged is all about that. It's the why of why we need to get outside.
mm,
Imagine If is 100 statements regarding our self-awareness. 100 statements. Imagine if every day we showed kindness. Imagine if every day we were grateful. Imagine if every day we exercise. Imagine if every day we showed love to someone who needed it. Like 100 statements to get you to think about, where am I in life? What am I doing? What am I not doing? And what I can do better. And if I can improve my world, then maybe I can improve the world around myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's Imagine If. And these books can all be found on movetoday365.com. You can follow me on Instagram at movetoday365, Facebook, Russell Rogers. These are ways that you can follow me and find out. DM me if you have any questions. You DM me if you want a signed copy,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. But that's my trajectory, man. And I just want to keep writing. I want to keep impacting people. I want to keep motivating people and inspiring people to get out, move their bodies, and move their minds.
Yeah, that's so dope. And so normally around this time, as I mentioned before we hit record, I ask my favorite 5 questions. Same 5 questions I ask every single guest for like maybe the last 150 interviews or something like that. Um,
Okay.
but I want to change it up a little bit. Again, I want to be a little bit more intentional, like we've been talking about today,
Okay.
about wealth. So my first question is, are you wealthy by your own definition?
I am.
You are.
Yes. Yeah, I am. I am. I mean, I'm wealthy in the sense that I've got family. I've got 3 adult kids. I've got 5 grandbabies. My mom is still living. I've got extended family. I've got friends in different communities here. Wealth is defined by those relationships and those friendships, both from 50 years ago to right now. And so I'm living that wealthy lifestyle through relationships and connections as we speak.
Okay. Then my follow-up question to that is, being that you already achieved your definition of wealth, how do you avoid complacency so that you don't lose it?
It's a great word. And this goes back to what I just said a little bit ago when the question was asked of me in 2023. When Craig asked me that question at the whole coffee shop on the East River in New York, he asked me, he said, "What is your word?" And that day, that word intentional that came into my head, because when you think about intentional, right, there's no room for doubt, there's no room for complacency, there's no room for procrastination if you're intentional about something. And intent can work in every aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I may think about something that I may not do, I think about that word intentional, and boom, it triggers a thought in my mind, like I need to be intentional no matter what area of my life, whether it's feeding my soul, whether it's moving my body, whether it's my mind, whether it's a relationship, whether I'm reading, whether I'm listening, whatever it is. If I'm intent about it, there's no room for complacency.
Okay, great. Next question. What will you say is the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome in order to achieve that definition, your definition of wealth?
Everybody's, probably not everybody, a lot of people will have self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Can I do this? Can I get in front of the screen? Can I get in front of the camera? Can I speak eloquently? Can I move people? That is overcoming self-doubt. And knowing who you are, be confident in yourself, because all of us have a story to tell
Mm-hmm.
and we need to tell it. It may not be the story that I have, because your story is going to be completely different. Your upbringing, John, is completely different than my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So we live different lives. But when you look at it, right, we're all moving in a path of success, however we define success. We're moving along that path. And so for me, it's so important, right, that we're building that within us, that we can move forward in our lives.
100%. And then last question, for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
First step is take the first step. A lot of people, because they doubt themselves, are not willing to take that first step. And so whatever it is, however you define wealth, be confident in who you are and take the first step. It's like an addiction. If you're dealing with an addiction, like, there's going to be things that are hindering you from taking that first step. We can have, as friends and family, say, "Listen, you need to go get help. You need to go get help." But until you take that first step yourself, you're not going to get the help you want, and the help that you need. And so, for success, wherever you define success in your life, take that first step of action. Don't let self doubt creep into your mind to say that you can't, because you can. Imagine if every day you did these things, but you believed in yourself.
All righty, and that is all for the podcast. Russ, thank you so much for hopping on.
Oh,
Really appreciate you taking the time and
absolutely.
finding some time in this 3 hour time delay to really drop some gems today. So thank you so much for hopping on.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it, man. It's great being with you.